Now, this is a different type of video in which I like to talk about Larry David, but not just him, other forgotten, talked down parts of great shows, movies, or media. The best example of this for me is Larry David, of course. Now, it's become much more clear in these last couple of decades that Larry David was kind of the real driving force behind Seinfeld, in terms of quality. Not to discredit Jerry, but you can kind of see the dip and change of tone with Seinfeld's later seasons.
Excuse me, darling. Do I detect a Portuguese accent?
Sim.
Das cafés uma ensalada grande, por favor.
And with Larry's show Curb Your Enthusiasm and how that ended, it becomes much more obvious of Larry, in my opinion, being much funnier than Jerry, whether through Curb or him writing the best seasons and episodes of. Now, why I call it a conundrum is the fact Jerry Seinfeld, I think, is still seen as more as the creator and kind of the head of the show, and thus him being remembered in a much more glowing light, which I think there are two main reasons why these two affect other people. I'd like to talk about the first, being the fact he doesn't appear in the show much. Now, of course, he does appear in Seinfeld, but not much, just in small, whilst mostly memorable cameos. Thus, when you think of Seinfeld, you think of Jerry's, his catchphrases, or his stand-up routines.
We're not gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not.
I mean, it's fine if that's who you are.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have many gay friends.
My father's gay.
And many more elements of Seinfeld, and I think that kind of plays into the back of your mind as you can put the face of the creator onto the show. This idea works as well for a few other series I'd like to talk about as well later on in this video. But staying on Larry David, right now the other bigger and more visible element in my opinion is that of the two creators, Jerry is in my opinion the much more braggadocious one out of the both of them. Just go and listen to literally any Jerry.
I had been on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson for 9 years. Nobody at NBC, nobody, not one person, after 9 years of going on Carson 3 and 4 times a year and killing, nobody said, why don't we talk to this kid?
As you can see, a very humble guy. And because he is so, I'm going to call him arrogant, you are more likely to look at that guy and think of him when talking about the show, and considering he constantly likes to bash, quote, woke Hollywood, end quote, he will likely remain more relevant than Larry. Now this conundrum can apply to many people, but for example, comic industry. It's huge for it. The most famous two examples being Jack Kirby and Bill Finger. Now Bill Finger was kind of overshadowed and underappreciated despite him creating some of Batman's most iconic things, like Gotham City, Bruce Wayne's name, Batcave, Batmobile. However, was not even really credited for him being the vital part and the foundations of Batman as a whole. Even dying without receiving a lot of money and didn't receive any credit due to Bob Kane taking all the credit. Finger dying alone, sick and broke. This is similar to Jack Kirby, the comic artist who basically is one of the reasons Marvel exists, and is still considered perhaps the greatest artist in comic history, creating iconic characters such as Doctor Doom, Iron Man, the X-Men, Thor, Hulk, and several other iconic memorable characters. When most people think of the creator of Marvel, it's Stan Lee. This is largely due to him taking creative control over these characters, and of course his cameos in MCU films, which follows the same thing as Jerry Seinfeld. And of course, the massive mistreatment that Jack Kirby received, whether getting screwed over from his characters or his work literally getting stolen. Overall, I highly recommend this interview with Alan Moore in which he talks about how mistreated Jack Kirby was, and how Stan Lee basically is remembered as this great and genius creator, whilst in reality, Kirby created most of it. Final example of this is similar to the Seinfeld case, in the sense people have started to credit the other person a lot more than originally intended, that being Stephen Merchant. Now, P.S. I was going to talk about the issue with Tarantino and Roger Avery in Pulp Fiction, however, I think there is already an incredible video on that topic, specifically by CinemaStick. Now, Merchant and Gervais basically came out together on radio, and eventually they were able to create The Office, which of course spawned multiple international versions, and made them both respectively tons of cash. But if you see with Gervais, is much more credited with the creation of The Office, which is thanks to both his now modern day arrogant personality, just look at his video setup with his awards in the background, and also because of him giving, in my opinion, one of the greatest TV performances in history as David Brent, which even the USA Office fans agree mostly that he is slightly better character, and the performance by Gervais is probably better than Steve Carell's.
Well, I am staying in the hotel.
I don't care, it's not my shift.
Well, you're an ambassador for the hotel.
I don't care.
I think you'll care
what
when I
you
tell
think.
you what the complaint
care.
is. I think there's been a rape up there.
They would remain friends, however, I do believe Merchant became aware of Ricky's arrogance, becoming more obvious to him, which is shown very evidently in the extras special, in which I think it's almost a crystal ball moment from Merchant, where he kind of predicted the modern day Ricky Gervais, complaining about everything lazy and most importantly, fame hungry. I think this is made worse by the fact if you see an interview with Mitch, they are always asking him about other people, whether The Office with Ricky or Carl Pilkington, not really about him, which is quite disrespectful and kind of discredits his talent as a writer, which in my opinion, I think Merchant is the more talented writer, in my opinion. Just look at Gervais's shows after their collapse. Derek just kind of being meh, and Afterlife being quite self-indulgent and missing that funny self-deprecating humour. Now, in my opinion, Gervais is the better actor overall, but Merchant is the better writer, and when they work together, it's magic. But Ricky's narcissism has made him more famous and still relevant, but kind of, in my opinion, lose that cool, funny edge he used to have. And I'm glad Stephen is able to get the recognition he deserves alongside Gervais. In conclusion, this isn't an attack on these people, I just think every member of a team should get credit when deserved for creating something as big as these guys have, which they have mostly started to get.